everyone, welcome to today's episode. I'm your host Rimil from InvoZone. As a quick introduction, at InvoZone, we collaborate with startups and enterprises to establish remote development teams by simply helping you acquire, hire, and retain top development talent. In our today's episode, we will discuss the dynamic world of remote software development, hybrid teams, leadership, and product development. If you're someone who's grappling with complexities of building remote or hybrid or offshore development teams, then this is your golden opportunity to learn from the guru himself. Someone who's been in your shoes and has been cultivating high-performing outsource and offshore development teams. I'm thrilled to announce my today's guest, Bruce Pospiech. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Hi, Ramon. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to our topics today.
Absolutely, especially because I did have an introduction prepared for you, but I thought it would be better if you go ahead and share your experience in life sciences, diagnostics, healthcare, and especially that your career spans esteemed organizations such as MetLife, United Healthcare, Ebbet. So walk us through your journey as a technology leader.
So it's funny, you step back and you go, wow, is it really 39 years in IT? I go, well, how old am I? You said, there you go. That seems like a high number to me. I never anticipated it being that high. This is my 39th year in IT. I started as a coder, as a developer. I jumped in and started at Allstate and kind of worked my way through, and it was just fun. I just had a great time doing it. And I stayed on the insurance side for about a dozen years, and then I joined Abbott Labs, and I was there for 20 years.
Wow.
Working on multiple different things, supporting large block of business on the pharma side. So I was supporting all the pharma business from an IT side, all the technology side, working closely with marketing and sales and all the commercial groups. And I had 6,500 remote reps that I was dealing with on a day in and day out business. At that time,
remote reps, that's a huge number.
It was big. And at that time, that's when I started working on an onshore offshore development model and started working through that, which was really a learning curve for me at the beginning, understanding how that works. And, everybody kept saying it's follow the sun. It's going to be seamless. It's going to be easy. Right. So, and then from there, I moved on to a role in Danaher under Leica. And I became the CIO there. So I had a global team. Mm-hmm. And there, the only one following the sun was myself, because I had an APAC team, a Europe team, and a US team. So for me, there was meetings all over the place. And I was always felt like I was behind. But I had development going every which way. And I was always open to things there. And then recently, I joined CentiBlick as the CTO. CentiBlick is a startup in telehealth. Basically, we call it a virtual care center, where we combine telehealth with scheduling. And then you might not be aware, but in the States, your medical records are a big deal. It's not located in one spot. It's located all over the place, depending on where you live, which medical groups you're in, seeing. So the average is you have 19 different instances of medical information. And what we're able to do is combine it all in and then actually take it and trend it out for you. So you can see, okay, so how is my cholesterol over the past 5 years? Am I going up? Am I going down? And at the same time, we're doing virtual care, so you can have that conversation with your doctor real time, and you can both see all your data, all your medical data from everywhere. So very excited by it. We're launching next month, and it's exciting. And I'm using an onshore offshore model right now, so it should help our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And I must say that CentiBlick is very lucky to have you, considering your diverse experience, not just in technology, but diverse departments and having to work with, global teams and enterprises, and now your journey as a technology leader at a startup. And I'm very confident that this podcast is going to be fun, just like all our past conversations. There is a lot to learn from you when it comes to structuring hybrid teams or offshore onshore teams. Why? Because you're not new to the concept of remote development. You're not like one of those generations who came acquaintance to the concept during the COVID times, but you have been doing this way before. So I'm going to start with my first question. That would be, when was the first time you came across the concept of offshore development teams, and what were the challenges that you were trying to address at that point?
So the first time I really started looking at this, I worked at Abbott. I had a very large IT team. I think it was closer to about 180 people. And what I was looking for initially, to be honest, I was looking for how do I reduce some cost in this, and how do I, in my mind, I'm like, okay, follow the sun. So I have developers working in our night, and I come in the morning, and it's all just going to keep moving, right? So I can do it faster and cheaper, and this. Okay, so that, I was naive, but I thought that was the model. The pushback I got from the offshore team was just leave us alone, hands off, leave us alone, and we're going to take care of everything. And in the morning, you're just going to see our work, right? So that was interesting. I hesitated, and then I basically said, yeah, no, I'm not doing it that way. I know what you're saying, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible for this block of business. And I'm going to align your architect with my architect. I'm going to align your lead developer with my lead developer. I'm going to align your test lead with my test lead for quality and compliance, your security group with my security group. And we're going to basically have touch points across the board, not just me talking to your VP of IT, but I'm going to have it so that on the ground level, everyone's engaged. Everybody understands what the mission is. Everybody knows their piece of business. And also I created an integrated schedule too. So I had a project schedule that had all the deliverables on there, all the tasks on there, but also all the dependencies, right? Who owned what, who needed what beforehand. And let me be clear, the offshore team did not like this model at all. They wanted me to be more hands off and just say, just write us the check and we'll be good. I'm not a believer in it just comes together at the end. I'm a believer it comes together as we go through this with some hard work and some checkpoints. So there is no magic behind the curtain. You have to have a clear understanding of what's working and what's not working. So for me, I still do it. I meet with my entire development team Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We review everything, and then we have a Scrum board that we use for all the drops that happen during the night. So I can see when I come in the morning, I see exactly what's going on, and I see exactly where we are. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we do a touch point with everything and go through everything. So that's the model I've been using for the last 20 some years. And it's worked well. It doesn't mean it solves all your problems, but it does mean at least you're aware of your problems. And I think that's the key, because again, if you wait to the deliverable date and then you start asking questions, you're going to find gaps. It just doesn't come in together like that. And then what you're going to do is do another release, or you're going to delay. And one thing I don't want to do is delay or go over budget. And from an IT side, that's always the challenge, right? So.
Absolutely. And you've answered many of my questions that I had because I believe that team collaboration is very important when you're working with an offshore team. So despite the physical distance, how would you, describe your entire plan or your best practices for ensuring collaboration? I do remember you emphasizing on the importance of video calls. So let's discuss that.
So initially, I'll be honest, I used to go to India quite a bit, and I'd go to meet my development team. I want them to have some skin in the game. I want them to put a name with a face. So I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy understanding the culture, understanding what's working, how do they work, what works best for them, and try to get a blended model between both sides, right? So you sit there and you go, okay. When I can't do that, what I do is I have one-on-ones with my lead development team. So I understand, again, who are they, right? What are they? How do they like to work? How do they, do they want me to, do they want to do updates with me? Do they want to, how do they handle issues? I want to understand projects that have worked for them and what's worked well, and projects that didn't work for them and what didn't work well. What do we need to adjust? So it's not a one-stop shop in this. Some of it takes time. But it's listening and understanding who you're working with, and try to make it work across. From a culture side, it's fun, right? They learn about us, they learn about them, and you just kind of chat. We talk about different things from sports to weathers to weather to, so we have a good time as we're going through it. And And for the most part, it works pretty well. But I personally, I love going one-on-one with my team, and at every level, not just like the VP over there, right? Anyone can meet with the VP, and VPs are, for the most part, are boring. It's really getting down to the technical level. And the good news is I can put on many hats. I was a project manager for years. I was a developer and programmer for years. I was in management for years. So I understand when I ask somebody kind of the level of effort, I ask, and I love technology. I love what we do, right? I love creation. I mean, you're creating all these new things that aren't there before. And so depending on what hat I can put on, I can kind of go and be my PM. I can do PM work. I can understand the issues and risks and how we manage it and mitigate. And I can put on my management hat and say, okay, so this is the conversation we're going to have. Or I can put on my developer hat, and I love challenging the development team because they don't think I know how to do it, but it's always fun.
Yeah, so you better tell them that they're messing up with the wrong guy. So,
exactly.
like you just mentioned one thing that previously when you were you had an offshore team at EBIT, the offshore team wanted to work independently. So I think that's where strong leadership skills come in, where you are actually able to set some best project management practices. You're able to bring the teams together on the same page. So let's just start with effective communication, because I'm sure you cannot travel to India all the time to just get one issue resolved. So I'm sure you must be utilizing some strong, effective communication tools. It could be Slack, Skype, or maybe a head of Zoom. Like, for example, over here at InvoTeams, we have a virtual meeting room where anybody can connect with any developer at any point, and they can, have an issue resolved on the go. So, what sort of tools are you utilizing?
So, two things. One is we use Teams. Right, so we do a video conferencing on Teams. Like I said, we do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then we do a Scrum board where it keeps track of all the code drops. What did they work on last night? Any issues, any new issues, any risks, any hard stops that we have to talk about. If there's a hard stop somewhere, then what we'll do is we'll meet early in the morning, and all of them are early in the morning, or late at night, but we'll meet and discuss it. The dynamic Scrum board kind of, so every day I get an update, and I get exactly what code was developed. Right. So I used to force my developers to do a code drop at the end of the week. Now, basically, I get a code drop every day. I can see exactly what screens were done. I can see exactly the logic, what APIs, what interfaces are working, what infrastructure pieces are done. And it's on a daily basis. They do a drop for me, and I can see everything. And then they check in the code, and I can go online and I can see exactly what's going on. So the next day when we meet, I can review everything. We're all on the same page. We can see. That works really well, to be honest. And even on you're in a startup and you're counting the head count, right? So it's not like, in corporate America, I could get plenty of head count. It was more of getting it all done. But in a startup, you're really focused on, okay, what can we do? How, we were multiple different hats, and how do we drive this with a smaller team? And with a smaller team, you depend on and rely on each other more. I mean, you just do. We have people who wear infrastructure hat one day, development the next day, mobile app the next day. I mean, we're multitasking all over the place. And one day, and my job is to make sure I go into a meeting that I ask the right questions. So I understand. A lot of times when there's an issue that we find out on Friday, there's an issue, and for me, I look at it and go, what question should I ask on Wednesday? Right? What should I challenge myself, because it'd be easy to pick on the development team and say, well, you did it wrong, right?
Right.
So, but for me, I look at it and go, okay, so as a leader in this organization who's been doing this, like we said, a while now, it's up to me to ask the right questions. It's up to me to go, okay, so if you're having problems developing it based on this requirement, is this requirement a small configuration, a medium configuration, or a heavy configuration? And then I would challenge my development team going, okay, so what do I get for small? What do I get for medium? What do I get for large? How big a gap is there in that requirement? Because maybe we're over configuring it for that last 5% to make it work, right? So for me, I look and go, okay, if you can give me 80% there, that's fine for right now, right? Maybe not, depends on the requirement. But I would take that back to my business and go, okay, marketing, sales, commercial, is this other 20% worth another? And I can put it in dollar perspective, or I can put it in day perspective, right? If it takes another 3 or 4 days to actually configure that requirement, is that worthwhile? Because sometimes the business creates these requirements and it's they haven't really thought it through. They don't understand it. They're just throwing things out there and like, oh, this would be cool. This would be cool. But if it's a heavy configuration, right, a lot of, or customization, and it's going to take the development team 2 weeks to do, and I go back to the business and say, okay, guys, is it worth $30,000 for you for this requirement? And they go, oh, no, right? So for me, I look at it and go, okay, before you get stuck and spend 2 weeks on this requirement, let me know, right? After 2 days, let me know. Where are we? And a lot of times they're working on something to make it exactly based on the requirement, which the business, they really think through the requirement to begin with. So they're like, oh yeah, we need this. Like, okay, but if I bring them back and say, okay, I got this for you, and they'll go home. Yeah, that's perfect. That's good. Mm-hmm. So, having that discussion on the development side takes trust, right? You have to work that through. And then I have to take it back to the business and say, here's some options, A, B, and C, right? Mm. And maybe sometimes they're right. Maybe that is the full requirement. It's a compliance issue. We got this, fine, got it. But let's have that dialogue, right? So, what was the original question? I kind of went off on that one, but
yeah, it was related to being a strong technology leader when it comes to, having good leadership skills when aligning teams for the same requirements and making sure that they're able to produce results. So that was the
question. I think your question sounded better than my answer. That's what I think.
So, Bruce, one thing that I'm curious about, as a startup, how have you structured your offshore and in-house development team? Because I understand that you're working on a hybrid model. It's not 100% offshore model. So how is your team structured? Like, how many developers do you have in-house? How many offshore? And just for, our understanding or understanding of somebody who's looking into this area, is it important to have senior developers offshore as well as in-house? How do you structure that?
All right, good questions. Look at you. So a couple of things. One is I have an architect who's here, who's in the States, and I have a lead developer, a director of IT that's in the States. And so I do have a development team here. A lot of it's on the back end, on the infrastructure side, security, compliance, but also they know development. And then I am using resources on offshore. I do have a tech lead offshore. I do think it's important that the team has somebody who is really kind of coordinating and managing all that, but not just I really actually want a developer out there too. Mm-hmm. I don't want somebody who's just doing, a lot of times you get a tech lead who's really not doing any of the work. From the technical side, they're managing the schedule, so they're really kind of a PM, a technical PM. Mm-hmm. In a smaller startup company, that doesn't work, right? So they might be doing 10% of that coordination on the back end, but at the end of the day, they're hands-on, they're handling the difficult parts of the system. So when you look at all the requirements and you go, okay, well, 60% is pretty light lifting. We can give those to junior developers. 30% is really for this piece, and then 10% over here. So my tech lead really handles the harder parts along with my my team in the States as well. So they kind of work together on the harder parts, and then the easier pieces of the configuration are really handed out. So for example, all the static screens, right? They're not connected. They're just static screens. Those just get farmed out to the junior programmers, and they can just crank them out and go through it. It's just work. But when you actually have to connect them in with the APIs, and you have to actually develop and put all the pieces together with the infrastructure and everything else, that takes a little more work, a little more experience, a little more of this. So, and then, all the devices, now you're working on, a mobile device, an iPad, and also the workstation. So you have multiple things. So you have multiple pieces going. And at the same time, offshore, not only do they unit test, but they also do a QAT test as well. Oh, okay. So there's that process as well. So that kind of churns through, and then I get it back, and then we see everything. So it's been working really well. I really like my team. I really like the setup. I'm very fortunate with what we're doing. It's a lot of fun, and to be this energized at this stage of my career, I think it's great, and I can't wait to start work every day.
Perfect. That's amazing. And this brings me to another challenge. By the way, you have a very, I think, comprehensive strategy out there. You have mitigated all the risk involved in that specific part. So when it comes to onboarding any new engineer, be it in-house or be it remotely offshore when you're scaling your team, We all know that developers have a love and a hate relationship with reading lengthy documentations. Nobody wants, developers especially, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they don't want to read 156-page documentation to understand a feature. So for example, in-house, we have some illustrative ways of defining and explaining the user stories, the user boards. So I'm very keen in understanding that what does the onboarding process of a developer looks at CentiBlick, and how soon do you think you can onboard a developer when they can actually start writing the first line of code as soon as you start onboarding them?
Yeah, I think just in general, I think it takes about a week. I think in general, I think you kind of get them access to everything, start going through it. I line up sales presentations, sales decks, so they understand the whole company, all lines of services, all lines of businesses. We use a tool called Figma, graphic tool, and it's been great as far as taking it. And from a development side, I wish we had that years ago, because you're right. I used to get pages of screens and this and their fields and things. Well, with Figma, it's a visual, right? So I can see exactly what the marketing, what the requirement is, what the marketing and sales teams developed, and I get a graphic image of what it is. And then when I hit this button, this is what comes up, and this is what the flow is, and the whole process. So from a development side, I know exactly what I'm supposed to develop. I know exactly, now it depends on the language, right? How close you can get to that, because just because it's done in Figma, okay, great, but it's still, there's still work to do on the software side. So in React or in Flutter or whatever tool you're going to use. So there's still some work to be done, obviously, but Figma has been a great tool for us, especially for to get that process all done. I've done it where it's been a dynamic session where I have everybody in the room and we're doing this on the fly. We're doing this, and there's this churn of actually configuring the screens and going through this and the screen, and then you go back and then you figure out, okay, but with Figma, it's done. We've already worked that through. We understand the flow, and then we can take it and really drop it in. And from a development side, it makes complete sense. Very rarely do they have questions. There might be some screens where it's like, we missed when I hit this button or I hit this icon, what happens? What's the next flow we might have missed? The flow might have stopped there or something. We have to circle back, go through that. But from a screen side, it's pretty easy. Then we have to connect it all in the back end, get all the data and all the APIs and environment and everything else. And then we have to put security around it. But it's been very dynamic and it's been great. I would recommend using this process to anyone, to be honest.
So when it comes to onboarding developers on site versus offshore, is the time frame same, or do you think that whenever you're onboarding developers offshore, they're taking more time than the in-house developers, or do you think that your process is comprehensive enough for each team member?
I say slightly more, probably offshore, because slightly, but nothing significant, nothing that I would go, oh, it took an extra 2 weeks, it took an extra week. I brought on some developers on the offshore, and the tech lead, who then, once we get the tech lead offshore trained and they understand all the documentation, they can streamline through our process and get them up going quicker, right? So it took a little while to get the first group in, but when they bring somebody on offshore, they go through a lot quicker, because they look and go, okay, this is what you really need to know. This is the flow. Here's the Figma process. Here's this. And for them, it's all about what the process is overall, the development process itself. Okay. And as long as the requirements are laid out in a specific way, they can roll through it pretty quick.
Perfect. And when it comes to time zones, because whenever you have an offshore team, it might lead to sleep-deprived projects. And you mentioned like next day when you wake up, you check the code and stuff like that. So how do you overcome these challenges?
As far as the time zones?
Yeah, are they working in a different time zone, or are they aligned with your time zone? And just if in case they're working in a different time zone, is that a challenge for you?
And I know your company does it differently, but the time zone, what I found is if I have somebody aligned with my time zone, it's very difficult to keep that team intact. Okay. So for me, just because, to be honest, there's so many options, and working third shift or working, it's just challenging. So I know you're a night owl, so you like the whole middle shift, and you do this,
Yeah, 100% time zone alignment. So
exactly,
this is a different case. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I let them work the time zone that they want. And then what we do is develop the processes in place to make sure we have the right checks in place to make sure. Once you get them up to speed and once it's laid out pretty good, everybody knows what they're focused on. We do 2-week sprints. So we develop everything. So while I have a whole long project schedule with all the different, all the integrated tasks and dependencies, we do 2-week sprints. So we operate in 2-week shots. So we just think, okay, in the next 2 weeks, here's the key focus items. Here's everything that we should be doing on our project schedule in the next 2 weeks, and we focus in on that. And then I could see right away when we're slipping or what we're doing. And then we'd kind of shift and go, okay, what's happening here? Is this requirement that much more difficult? And then go back to my original point of if something is that much more difficult, are we over configuring it or over customizing it based on this requirement? And then I'll take the action I'm going, let's review the requirement again and make sure this is what we really need before we spend. But in the 2-week shift model, it's been great. It gives everyone clarity on what we're doing, where we're going to be, where am I going to be on Friday, right?
Right.
So I think when you break it down, because if you look at a project schedule and it's 6 months and you sit there and go, oh my gosh, this is so big, blah, 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 but if I take it and go, okay, Romuald, you got 2 weeks here on this Friday, this is where you're going to be. And on next Friday, this is where you're going to be, right? And you're going to track it that way. And then you give me an update. So everyone on the development team gives me their update Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Nobody hides behind a tech lead. Nobody does anything. You show it to me and go, okay, show me what you did, right? And then you walk me through. And to be honest, I'm giving the developer a chance to show off, right? What did they work on, right? Exactly. There's nothing cooler than, because I used to have development team going all the time. The developers used to go, well, I want to be a project manager. I go, well, why? They go, well, they get all the credit. I'm like, okay, all right. They coordinate the meeting, they manage the schedule, they manage the budget, they manage the risk, right? But for them, it's about visibility, right? So I used to bring developers all the time and say, okay, let's show the business what you did. I didn't do it. Let's show the business what you did and say, okay, present your work and give them a chance to show off what they did. And now Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the development team shows me. They put it all on the Scrum board and I can see everything, right? But then they walk me through. Hey, I worked on these screens. I worked on this functionality here. Look at it. And it works great. And this way they get a chance to, because think about it. If you were working on something for 2 weeks, then you're like, okay, well, great. Now I got what next am I working on, right? But
Absolutely. And I also
now you're like, hey, look, I did this, I did this, right? The sense of ownership.
Exactly. And it's also a sense of purpose. I'm sure this enhances the efficiency, collaboration, and also accountability within the team. So I would say this is yet another powerful framework that you've created within your teams. Because often, yes, I've also felt that developers do feel that the project manager is taking away all the credit because the project manager is there to share the progress, not the developers. So yeah, I think that's a good take on it. So see,
and I'll be honest, I since I came from the development side, right? So I was, at one point I actually worked and I did all the development, did a bunch of stuff and built rating systems and built these things. So I know what irritated me and what I looked at it and went, well, okay, one day I'm going to have. So that's been kind of my model now for the past, 25 years.
Perfect. That's amazing. And another challenge that, or a concern that startups usually or typically have is related to data security. So what measures do you think a startup needs to take when collaborating with remote teams or an offshore development partner when it comes to protecting sensitive information?
So the data side is interesting. The data is really on the state side. So it's really in our infrastructure. We found some good partners on the back end, and I'll tell you what, for those of you who are looking at startup companies in the first time doing it, there's a lot of great programs out there. I've been working with Amazon for a long time, and the AWS startup program is just phenomenal. They do a great job helping and building it up. I've looked at different service providers, and AWS stood through. I mean, it was terrific. I've talked to Microsoft, talked to Oracle, and there's really some great startup programs out there that really help you get everything up and going quickly for very little cost, to be honest. I mean, there's obviously a cost, but they really, I wish I would have got this kind of service from AWS when I was running some of these large corporate organizations, because it seemed like it was always kind of like we're battling Microsoft, we're battling Oracle, we're battling, and I didn't, I can meet with different lines of business in AWS. We meet with the IoT team every couple of weeks. We talk to their architects about our infrastructure. We talked about their security. We talked about, performance. We talked about scalability. They have all these resources willing to help startups. So my take on it is I would talk to your service provider on some of that and what type of programs they have. It's been great. And it was something that was a surprise out of all this, to be honest.
Okay.
And then there's some terrific companies out there that are smaller, and talking about on the finance side, on the HR side, on the ERP side, on the CRM side, right? So, we use these smaller companies that integrate in days, right? You can pop them in, integrate to your overall infrastructure, and you are done in a couple of days. Where, in Salesforce, if you're going to roll out a new Salesforce, it is going to be a 6-month journey, okay. With reporting and everything. And instead, we plugged in HubSpot, and we were good in a week, right? We started on a Monday, we were done on Friday.
Wow.
We were integrated in, and it was terrific. And they great support. And there's a lot of companies out there who are willing to help startups. And there's a lot of,
So you have R&D on the latest tools and technologies.
Right. It's been great. It's even like the HR systems, right? Bamboo integrates. It's easy. And it's just, I would recommend everyone take a hard look at some of these other vendors that are out there.
Perfect. I think that's a good advice. And when it comes to speed, quality, and cost savings as a startup with outsourced software development teams, do you think is it actually possible when they say you get speed, agility, and cost savings by embracing offshore development teams? If yes, if no, what's your take on that?
Yes, I believe you do. I'll answer that quite simply. Yes, I think there's clearly a benefit. There's a benefit from a cost savings, and I think also the quality of work and the engineering that's in the offshore model is very good. It's excellent. The hardest part is working through the processes to make it all integrate from different time zones, different cultures, different things. So, but from an IT side, think of it this way: from an IT side, we're engineers at heart. Okay, so at the end of the day, we're engineers. And so as long as people define what the process is, what's the scope, what are we trying to accomplish, and you put that all out there, and the processes are defined, people will follow the process. We're engineers at heart. We're not salespeople. We're not marketing people, right? So we're not all over the place. We like a process. We like following this, right? So, so for me, the resources right now, my current resources offshore, absolutely terrific from a technical side. Couldn't say enough.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you. How long they've been with you?
Say that again.
How long have your offshore resources been with you? How long they've been working with you now?
This new offshore resource is about 6 months.
Okay, perfect. And this is one question I think I'm going to be asking all my guests in every single episode that I do, is like, whenever you're hiring a developer, apart from the technical skills, what skills are you looking into, especially when hiring a remote developer? Is your checklist different, or is it the same?
I think it's pretty much the same. I look at, depending on what level it is, I guess what I will say is, depending on what their role is, right? Are they a junior developer? Are they a senior developer? Are they infrastructure? Are they architect? So depending on what their role is, my expectation is going to vary, right? So on a junior developer, I'm looking for somebody who has experience in what we're doing, right? It could be on the healthcare side. It could be using React or Flutter. Have they done mobile devices? Have they done workstation? So I'm looking just the basics. On a more senior developer, I actually looking at more, okay, what environments have you worked in? What's your background overall? Have you integrated with these applications? How well have you done? Tell me about a project that was a win. Tell me about a project that your team struggled. What did you do? On an architect side, I'm looking for somebody with security and compliance as well as development experience. So, but what I will say is, across the board, either on-site or offshore, my criteria would be the same. Okay. So when I'm talking to somebody on the technical side, my criteria would be the same depending on where they're located. Is okay, that's fine. But if I was hiring a tech lead here in the States or a tech lead offshore, my criteria would be the same.
Perfect. And one thing that I'm really eager to learn about is your trip to India. How was it? And you actually ended up visiting India during the monsoon season. So what are your key takes away from your trip to India?
So I've been to India several times. So I've been, let's see, ready? Mumbai,
Yeah.
Bangalore, Delhi, Calcutta,
Oh,
Chennai. What else? So you know, when you go in the right season, it's great. Okay. And when you go in the wrong season, you're like, oh, how's this work? Right. I mean, if you go and every day it's raining and it's hot and it's, you know, and it's tough. But the people are great. I'll be honest. They love showing off their town, their village, their city.
wow.
They love showing off their workspace, their culture, right?
Yeah,
And
it
things,
has a
you know,
very
things, right? Exactly. So if I was in Pakistan, you'd be like, okay, this is what I want to show you, right? Boom, boom, boom. And you know, how much fun is that, right? So you sit there for me. How much fun is that for me, right? Because I don't know. So you sit there and you go, and you know, I feel more like a politician than an IT person while I'm doing it. But it's great. I've always enjoyed meeting the people, understanding their family, what's important to them. I always poke at their commute because some of the commutes in India are really really fun. So you sit there and you go, wow, you're in the car for 2 hours every morning, 2 hours. And they're like, yeah, but I'm working, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah. So so it's always been fun. I love the food. I'm a foodie. I love trying different things and exploring different things. The only negative is it takes about 20 hours to get back and forth.
Oh.
But I've had that. I would say the same thing about Australia. As I've been Australia and New Zealand, and you know, so the flight is just long for me.
And India happens to have some of the best developers. And you have, by the way, promised me a trip to Pakistan. So whenever you're visiting India next, visit us here in Pakistan.
We'll pop
And
in.
yes, we have a lot of things to show off, especially food. We are big time
Food.
foodies, so there's a lot of street food waiting for you. Good street food. So Bruce, if we have to like wrap up our conversation, could you share one final piece of advice or a key takeaway for startups that are actually looking to harness the true potential of offshore development teams? I know you have already emphasized on a lot of factors, but what do you think is the most important factor that they should keep in mind when embarking on this journey specifically?
Well, I think having a hybrid model, a blended model, will really help you. I think having a tech team that you can, you know, in your time zone that you could talk to and work through some items, a tech lead here, an architect here, and then also having the processes as you're building that team out, making sure that you're actively engaged. They're part of your team. You know, I want them to want us to work hard and make it work. They're part of my team. That's the way I look at them. You know, they're in a different country. Great, terrific. But they're part of our organization and we're working hard to make it blend in. And if there's an issue, good, bad, let me know. Tell me about it. And, you know, building that trust, it's not a light switch. It's going to take some time. But if you work the processes through and you talk to them and you understand what they're doing and what's going on, and you avoid the surprises. And, you know, it can work. And you just have to make sure that you're focused on the right items. And I'd also recommend doing the 2-week sprint or a week sprint. I think keeping everybody focused at that level really helps. I think when developers look at it, you know, I'm doing this for 3 months and it's just this long thing and I'm joining today and tomorrow. But when you sit there and you go, hey, by Friday, this is where we're going to be, right? And then let them show off a little bit. Give them, you know, they're all creative. They're creative. They're developers. They're engineers. They're building something, right? That wasn't there before. So let them show off. Give them a chance to show off. You know, do a team meeting and go, okay, right now, Johnny, now Krupal is going to walk us through what he developed, right? And let them a chance to show off. Let them a chance to kind of say, hey, this is what I got going, right? So
Perfect.
and they'll be fun for them, and it's fun for me. So I try to have that at every meeting. I try to make sure that we're actively engaged, that I'm a leader in this team. And, you know, for me, it's all about enthusiasm. Do you want to be here? Do you want to continue? Do you want to drive this thing? And you know, the technical skills I can get, you know, but I love people with a high level energy, high level enthusiasm. And you can see, right? I'm all fired up now, right? So, I
Yes.
mean, after this, I got 2 more meetings ready to go, right?
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. Like even if a developer is in-house or offshore, they both need some sort of motivation level that keeps them going. So that is a very important point. I think that we should all integrate, whether we have an in-house team or offshore team. When it comes to showcasing their work, the developers should be the one doing that. And so Bruce, thank you so much for your time. As I said at the very start of our conversation, that today we will listen to this great advice from the guru himself. So I'm sure this has been a great learning opportunity for most of our listeners. And we look forward to many more amazing conversations in future as well. And thank you so much for taking your time out. I understand you have been very busy, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And, it's always a pleasure talking to you.